Picture this. You wake up one day and suddenly realize that the nearest full-service grocery store is now 15 miles from your front door. There was no press release, no heads up, no community meeting, just gone. This isn't some far-off scenario or dystopian prediction. This is the reality unfolding across America in 2025. Right now, a silent surge of grocery store closures is moving far faster than anyone anticipated, cutting into neighborhoods that never thought they'd lose their only reasonably priced place to buy food. Across the country, more than 7,000 grocery and retail locations have already shut their doors. But that raw number isn't what should worry you most. The real threat lies in the chain reaction those closures set off. When a store disappears, what follows are longer drives just to buy basic necessities, rising food costs, shrinking options on the shelves, and millions of Americans being pushed into what experts are now calling rapidly expanding food deserts. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people aren't openly discussing. The fastest failures aren't coming from mom-and-pop shops. The retailers collapsing at record speed are household names, massive national chains, some with histories stretching back more than a century. These are companies backed by billion-dollar corporations, brands once hailed as the future of high-tech, automated grocery shopping. And yet today, many of them are downsizing, pulling back, or vanishing altogether. Every shuttered store exposes something bigger and far more troubling. America's food supply system is under strain like never before, and the fractures are spreading into places that once felt untouchable. By the time this video ends, you'll understand exactly which grocery chains are failing, why this wave is happening right now, and how these changes could reach your own community before the year is over. Number 10. Kroger. For well over a century, more than 140 years, Kroger has served as a steady, familiar pillar of grocery shopping in America. It's the store many people over 50 remember tagging along to with their parents. A place where shopping trips followed a comforting routine and everything felt dependable. That's exactly why what's unfolding in 2025 feels so jarring. Kroger is officially pulling back. The company has announced plans to shut down around 60 stores over the next year and a half. On the surface, 60 locations might not sound alarming. But once you look at how grocery economics actually work, the picture changes fast. Grocery stores typically survive on razor-thin margins, usually somewhere between 1 and 3%. That means even modest increases in wages, fuel costs, or transportation expenses can wipe out an entire year's profit in a matter of weeks. Right now, all of those pressures are hitting at the same time. Refrigerated delivery trucks cost more to operate than some locations bring in. Labor costs climb quarter after quarter. And perhaps most damaging of all, customer behavior has quietly shifted in ways that hurt Kroger more than most. Middle-income shoppers now spread their spending across multiple stores. Walmart for low prices, Aldi for quick and cheap trips, and Costco for bulk deals. Younger consumers chase discounts and promotions instead of sticking with one brand. Older shoppers on fixed incomes are cutting back because their receipts seem to grow heavier every month, even when they buy less. All of this leaves Kroger stuck in the position no retailer wants to be in, the middle. It's not the cheapest option, not the fastest, and not the most aggressive value play. It's simply caught between competitors that each do something better. And while that's a tough spot for the company, the real consequences land squarely on local communities. In many smaller towns, Kroger isn't just another grocery store. It's the only pharmacy, the only reliable source of fresh produce, and the only realistic option for families who can't afford to drive an extra 20 minutes just to buy food. When a Kroger shuts its doors in places like that, it doesn't just leave a vacant building behind, it disrupts the entire rhythm of daily life in that town. Number 9. Safeway. For generations on the West Coast, Safeway has been far more than a place to pick up groceries. It became part of the everyday flow of life, especially for older adults who valued seeing the same faces, walking the same aisles, and following routines that felt familiar and reassuring. Safeway carried a sense of permanence, like it would always be there. In 2025, that feeling of security is starting to fracture. Across California, Washington, and Oregon, Safeway locations have begun shutting down quietly, almost without notice. In the San Francisco Bay Area alone, 4 stores closed within a single year. Shoppers pulled into the parking lot expecting an ordinary errand, only to be met with darkened windows, locked doors, and sometimes a simple handwritten sign taped to the front. There were no announcements, no transition plans, and no time for nearby residents to adjust. One day it was open, the next day it wasn't. What's happening goes far beyond any one neighborhood. Safeway operates under the Albertsons umbrella, and when a parent company starts to wobble, every brand beneath it feels the impact. Restocking delays are becoming routine. Product availability shifts unpredictably from week to week. Meanwhile, the cost of doing business on the West Coast continues to rise faster than the slim profits a traditional grocery store can realistically sustain. Customers who once relied on Safeway for their after-work stops are now comparing receipts. When they see lower totals at Walmart, Trader Joe's, or Costco, many quietly change where they shop. Over time, those small decisions add up. Yet the loss people talk about most isn't financial, it's emotional. Many shoppers over 50 say Safeway is the one store where they know the employees by name and feel genuinely recognized. When that store closes, it feels like more than a retail shutdown. It feels like the disappearance of a shared space, a familiar anchor that helped define the community's everyday life. Number 8. Albertsons. Albertsons is one of those brands many Americans believed would always exist. With nearly 90 years of history and a massive portfolio that includes Safeway, Vons, Jewel Osco, and several of the country's most recognizable grocery names, it felt untouchable. Too big, too established, too deeply woven into everyday American life to seriously falter. But 2025 is telling a very different story. Behind the scenes, Albertsons is facing one of the most vulnerable periods in its entire history. Financial analysts have begun issuing warnings that almost no one expected to see tied to a company of this scale. Credit rating agencies have flagged Albertsons as carrying a very high risk of default, a classification that sent shockwaves through the retail world. The warning signs didn't appear overnight. Long before headlines caught on, customers and employees across California, Washington, and Nevada started noticing subtle changes. Shelves took longer to refill. Product selection narrowed. Veteran workers quietly admitted that day-to-day operations felt off, even if no one was saying it out loud. Then came the figure that truly shook employees, a reported $565 million gap in the company's pension fund. For tens of thousands of workers who spent decades building their lives around these stores, that shortfall feels like the ground suddenly giving way beneath them. Albertsons' hoped-for escape was its planned merger with Kroger, a massive deal designed to help both companies survive an increasingly punishing retail landscape. But regulators stepped in, blocking the merger on antitrust grounds. That decision left Albertsons trapped in an uncomfortable middle ground, not financially strong enough to confidently stand alone, yet legally barred from merging to regain stability. Now the company exists in a kind of corporate limbo, and every month spent there pushes it closer to a breaking point. That uncertainty doesn't stay confined to boardrooms. Communities feel it too. Neighborhoods that depend on Albertsons for fresh groceries and pharmacy services sense the instability creeping in. Nearby small businesses lose foot traffic. Older shoppers worry about losing the store they know best, the one that feels familiar, accessible, and reliable. Number 7. Amazon Fresh. When Amazon Fresh first appeared, it felt like the grocery world had finally leapt into the future. Shoppers could walk in, grab what they needed, and leave without ever stopping at a checkout. No lines, no awkward small talk, no standing behind overflowing carts during the evening rush. It looked smooth, high-tech, and inevitable, the kind of bold leap only a company like Amazon could make. By 2025, that futuristic promise has run straight into real-world limits. And the outcome looks nothing like what early hype suggested. Amazon has quietly shut down several Amazon Fresh locations across the country, and the reasoning behind those closures exposes a problem even cutting-edge technology couldn't solve. At the heart of these stores was the Just Walk Out system, a complex web of sensors, scanners, and ceiling-mounted cameras tracking every item customers touched. Building a single store cost millions of dollars, and keeping it running demanded even more. That might work in other industries, but grocery retail operates on some of the slimmest profit margins anywhere. When the price of the technology outweighs the profit from the food on the shelves, the numbers simply fall apart. Inside the stores, the experience was undeniably impressive, but it was also incomplete. Technology could log what you picked up, But it couldn't answer simple human questions. It couldn't explain expiration dates, suggest which apples were sweeter that week, or notice when produce looked tired and needed attention. Most importantly, it couldn't offer the familiar, personal connection many shoppers rely on. In the process, Amazon learned a lesson traditional grocers have understood for decades. Grocery shopping isn't just about efficiency, it's an emotional routine built on trust, touch, and habit. Food shopping is personal in a way algorithms struggle to replicate. Communities noticed the experiment falling apart. Customers who enjoyed the novelty were left confused when their local store suddenly closed. Others, who were skeptical from the start, saw the shutdowns as proof that automation alone can't replace the human side of buying food. Number 6. Save a Lot. Save a Lot was created with a very clear mission: to keep groceries within reach for Americans living on tight budgets. For decades, it stepped into neighborhoods that other chains overlooked, places where every dollar mattered, and even small price increases could disrupt a family's entire week. Because of that focus, Save a Lot felt like one of the few stores that would always survive. But in 2025, that assumption is being challenged. Even a grocery chain designed specifically for low-income shoppers is now struggling to stay afloat. Over the past 10 years, Save a Lot has already closed or sold off more than 300 locations, and the pullback is still continuing. In states like Missouri, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, the pattern has become familiar. Shelves slowly thin out. Product choices quietly shrink. Then one day, without warning, a sign appears on the door announcing the store is permanently closed. Some shutdowns happen so quietly that residents don't find out until they stop by after work and see the lights off, the carts chained, and the doors locked for good. The problem isn't a lack of customers. Save a Lot's shoppers never left. The deeper issue is that the very people the store serves are struggling too much to support a fragile business model in a hyper-competitive era. Rival chains like Dollar General, Aldi, and Walmart Neighborhood Market have built logistics systems so efficient they can keep prices low and still turn a profit. Save a Lot simply can't match that level of scale or efficiency. Its franchise system is scattered, its distribution network is outdated, and its financial reserves are too thin to survive in a market where every penny counts. The consequences go far beyond spreadsheets and balance sheets. When a Save a Lot closes, many neighborhoods lose their most affordable option for food overnight. Families already stretched by rising rent, utilities, and transportation costs are suddenly forced to drive farther and spend more on basic groceries they were barely managing to afford before. The loss of a discount grocery store doesn't just create a food desert, it creates something deeper. It creates a hope desert, leaving communities with expensive choices they were never financially prepared to make. Number 5. Winn-Dixie. For almost 100 years, Winn-Dixie has been woven into the cultural fabric of the American South. In states like Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, that red and white sign meant more than just a grocery store. It was the place families stopped after church, where grandparents picked up ingredients for Sunday dinner, and where daily routines passed quietly from one generation to the next. Those traditions felt permanent, almost unshakable. That's why what's happening in 2025 feels less like a business adjustment and more like a slow-moving earthquake across the region. Southeastern Grocers, the parent company of Winn-Dixie, has confirmed yet another wave of permanent store closures this year. Unlike past rebranding efforts or strategic reshuffles, these shutdowns aren't about fine-tuning operations. They're about staying alive. Transportation costs have surged to record highs for the company. Fuel prices and long-distance delivery routes hit southern markets especially hard, and every additional mile traveled by refrigerated trucks eats further into already thin margins. At the same time, wages across the South have continued to rise, pushing operating expenses beyond what many older Winn-Dixie locations can support with their modest sales. The brand now finds itself caught between memory and reality. Shoppers who once remained fiercely loyal are increasingly chasing lower prices at Walmart, quicker trips at Publix, or weekly bargains at Aldi. Younger families prioritize what fits their budget. Older shoppers choose whatever saves them time and extra driving. What Winn-Dixie offers simply no longer aligns with a region where inflation has steadily reduced buying power for 3 straight years. Yet the financial impact tells only part of the story. The emotional loss hits far harder. In many southern towns, the closure of a Winn-Dixie signals the end of a shared routine that helped anchor the community. Nearby restaurants see fewer customers. Small local businesses feel the slowdown. And for longtime residents, it's the quiet disappearance of a familiar landmark that once shaped the rhythm of everyday life. Number 4. Sprouts Farmers Market. For a long time, Sprouts Farmers Market represented something rare in American grocery shopping. A healthier way to eat without the sticker shock that usually comes with stores like Whole Foods. It became a favorite for shoppers who wanted fresher produce, cleaner ingredients, and a general sense of wellness without feeling like they were blowing their budget. In 2025, that promise is starting to fall apart. And it's not because people stopped caring about nutrition or healthy lifestyles. The problem is that the price of maintaining those habits has climbed past what most households can realistically afford. Inflation has completely changed what reasonable means at the grocery store. A container of strawberries that once felt like a small indulgence now approaches $9. Basic greens regularly exceed $5. Organic meats often cost double their conventional counterparts. For middle-class families already dealing with higher rent, utilities, insurance, and medical bills, eating clean no longer feels like a choice. It feels like a luxury. As these financial pressures mount, Sprouts has quietly begun pulling back. Locations in California, Colorado, Arizona, and New York have reduced staff, scaled down fresh food sections, or closed altogether with little to no public notice. In some neighborhoods, the signage disappeared almost overnight. The challenge runs deeper than individual store performance. Sprouts occupies an uncomfortable middle ground, healthier and fresher than traditional supermarkets, yet not affordable enough for families trying to stretch every dollar. Trader Joe's undercuts prices with extreme efficiency and limited selection. Whole Foods captures higher-income shoppers who aren't as price-sensitive. Sprouts ends up stuck between aspiration and reality. That shift is deeply personal for many customers. Shoppers who once filled their carts with organic produce now admit they simply can't afford to eat that way anymore. They buy less, visit less often, or leave altogether. For many people, Sprouts symbolized balance, a place where taking care of your health still felt achievable. Watching that balance disappear feels like losing something more than a store. It feels like losing a small but meaningful source of hope. Number 3. Lies Market. Lies Market once felt like a hopeful glimpse into a better kind of grocery store. Organic food without the sky-high prices, healthier options without flashy, elitist branding, and a warm, inviting atmosphere that felt more like a neighborhood shop than a corporate chain. For a long time, Lies earned a reputation as the friendlier cousin of Trader Joe's and the more approachable alternative to Whole Foods. It seemed to strike the perfect balance. By 2025, that balance has been shattered by a far less forgiving economic landscape. The cost of bringing organic food to shelves has surged across the board. Farming inputs, transportation, refrigeration, and labor all became more expensive well before inflation began to cool. For a company built on the idea of healthy but affordable, those rising expenses attacked the one thing Lies couldn't afford to lose: its already thin margins. By late 2024 and into early 2025, the pressure became impossible to ignore. Lies reported steep, double-digit drops in revenue, and store closures followed quickly. Locations in Colorado, Florida, and Ohio shut down in rapid succession. Some stores closed just days after internal decisions were made, leaving shoppers shocked and employees scrambling for clarity and next steps. The deeper tragedy behind Lies' collapse lies in how it was positioned. Unlike Trader Joe's, with its tightly controlled private label model, or Whole Foods, backed by Amazon's massive financial support, Lies stood largely on its own. It was trying to compete in a grocery world where the rules had shifted, where large chains had enormous financial cushions and smaller players needed near-perfect efficiency just to stay alive. Lies was well-loved, but affection alone can't override broken economics. Customers who once made Lies a regular part of their weekly routine are now seeing the same unsettling pattern play out that's affecting communities nationwide. Fresh food sections shrink. Local specialties vanish. Entire stores go dark with little warning, and many shoppers are reaching the same conclusion. The idea of affordable organic food no longer fits the economic reality of the America they're living in today. Number 2. Piggly Wiggly. More than 100 years ago in 1916, Piggly Wiggly forever changed how Americans buy groceries. It was the first store to introduce self-service shopping, allowing customers to walk the aisles on their own, grab items directly from shelves, and push their own carts. What feels completely normal today was groundbreaking at the time. Piggly Wiggly didn't just launch a grocery chain. It helped invent the modern supermarket itself. For generations throughout the South, the pink sign with the smiling pig wasn't just a logo. It was a familiar landmark, a piece of local culture woven into everyday routines. But in 2025, that historic presence is quietly slipping away. There haven't been major announcements or dramatic headlines. Instead, Piggly Wiggly locations have slowly vanished, one by one, across South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Mississippi between 2022 and 2025. Stores that once overflowed with weekend shoppers now sit empty. Parking lots crack and fade. Signs are removed or replaced by independent businesses. Some buildings remain abandoned for months, their dusty windows making it feel as though decades of history were erased overnight. This decline isn't simply about time passing or changing tastes. Piggly Wiggly is held back by an aging franchise structure, fragmented ownership, inconsistent store quality, and a distribution system that can't compete with Walmart's massive scale or Aldi's relentless efficiency. Modernizing costs money, and many locations never fully upgraded to digital inventory systems, faster restocking methods, or the shopping experience younger customers now expect. In a business where profit margins are razor-thin, tradition alone isn't enough to keep the lights on. But what hurts longtime shoppers the most isn't just that the stores are closing, it's how quietly it all happens. There's no farewell, no recognition of the store's legacy, no thank you to the generations who walked those aisles. One day, the doors are locked. The next, the smiling pig is gone. And for many small towns, losing a Piggly Wiggly feels like losing a piece of who they are. A place tied to memories that stretch back decades. Number 1. Family Dollar. Family Dollar's collapse stands apart from every other chain on this list. Most grocery and discount stores fade slowly. Profits thin out, expenses climb, and competition slowly squeezes them. What happened to Family Dollar in 2025 was far more abrupt and far more disturbing. It wasn't a gradual decline. It was a shockwave. In less than 3 years, Family Dollar closed 390 locations as part of restructuring and mounting financial losses. That alone would be serious. But it isn't what pushed the chain to the top of this list. The true turning point came from a crisis no one saw coming. One so severe, it forced hundreds of stores to shut down almost overnight. Inside one of Family Dollar's main distribution centers in Arkansas, federal inspectors uncovered a massive rodent infestation. The situation was so extreme that regulators immediately shut down 404 additional stores across multiple southern states. There was no phase-out, no transition period. One day they were open, the next, they weren't. What inspectors found inside the warehouse shocked even seasoned investigators. Chewed food packaging, contaminated shipments, and widespread waste that made products unsafe for sale. The fallout was swift and devastating. More than 1,000 products were recalled across the region, making it one of the largest recall events the low-cost retail sector has ever faced. Trust collapsed overnight. Suppliers backed away. And a chain already surviving on razor-thin margins was suddenly buried under a crisis it couldn't outrun. But statistics only tell part of the story. Family Dollar serves some of the poorest neighborhoods in America, places where grocery options are scarce, transportation is limited, and every dollar carries weight. Many of these communities don't have a Walmart neighborhood market. They don't have an Aldi. Some barely have a traditional grocery store at all. For millions of households, Family Dollar isn't a convenience. It's the closest and most affordable source for basics like canned food, toiletries, cleaning supplies, and school snacks. When a Family Dollar closes, people don't just lose a store. They lose their only nearby option. The consequences are immediate and deeply personal. Single parents suddenly have to drive 10 or 15 miles just to buy necessities. Older adults on fixed incomes must stretch already strained budgets even further. Families living one unexpected bill away from crisis are left with fewer choices and higher prices. These closures don't just change where people shop. They change how people survive day to day. That's why Family Dollar sits at the top of this list. Not because it's the biggest chain, but because its collapse leaves the biggest human gap behind. It exposes the most fragile fault lines in America's grocery system, a system where the poorest communities have the fewest safety nets, and where a single corporate disaster can erase access to affordable goods overnight. Taken together, the stories in this countdown point to a hard truth. America's grocery landscape is changing faster than anyone expected. Rising costs, shrinking margins, and expanding food deserts reveal just how unstable the system has become. These closures aren't just business moves. They reshape daily life, especially for older adults and low-income families. As more chains pull back, communities are forced to adapt to longer drives, higher prices, and fewer choices. And with even more grocery store closures projected this year, the map will continue to shift. Which chain's decline surprised you the most? If this opened your eyes, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next major shift.